yesterday we kind of brought together a year-long effort to have the inaugural Sagamore National Security Conference with our partner at Notre Dame University. It was an all-day event. We wanted to focus on the idea that the Midwest has a different perspective when it comes to national security for a couple of reasons. One, Midwesterners are more pragmatic. We're more interested in solutions than admiring the problem, which is something that we have observed elsewhere. And also because we have such a large manufacturing base here in the Midwest, with Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, and Wisconsin competing for who has the most manufacturing jobs in any given year, we wanted to have a conversation about that, specifically about the defense industrial base. So we did an all-day conference yesterday and had a wonderful time.
You had Senator Todd Young, former Senator Joe Donnelly, you had Ambassador O'Brien, our mutual friend, who was the National Security Advisor. You had a great group of people. What was the bottom line on bringing defense industries back to the Midwest or expanding their footprint in the Midwest?
So the bottom line there was that national security and defense is in the Midwest. It's always been in the Midwest. However, we don't really appreciate it or talk about it because manufacturing and industrial production is just something we have always done. A lot of people talk about the Midwest as a rust belt, but there's not much rusty about the Midwest right now. We're doing car manufacturing, both traditional cars as well as new electric cars. We're doing aircraft manufacturing. We're doing, we're producing wheeled vehicles for the Army as well as tanks for the Army in the Midwest. And so we've always been doing this, but we as Midwesterners, because it's just part of the air we breathe, we don't talk about it a lot. And this was a time to kind of bring that all together and highlight what it is we're doing, and also to bring together the vast national security expertise we had. You're right. Senator Dan Coates, former senator, is our founder at the Sagamore Institute. And so, Senator Joe Donnelly, Senator Young, Senator Talent drove up from St. Louis to spend the day with us. And those are all friends who are interested in creating a centrist, pragmatic solutions to these problems.
Now, how much did politics dominate the corridor conversation? Because there are presentations and people go to them. But then people at every defense conference I've ever been to, more is discussed and whispered about on the sidelines than in the main symposia. What is the buzz in the hallways at what is in effect the Halifax conference, the Reagan Defense Forum, the Munich conference, what used to be Aspen, but Aspen's crashed and burned? What was the whisper?
Well, the whisper was the importance of trying to find, again, solutions rather than sort of get drawn into the issues. One of the things that came up yesterday was, we need to stop being so angry about things and start becoming optimistic. That was actually the message that Senator Young shared with us. He's the author of the Chips and Science Act from 2 years ago, and he came to talk about that and then talk about other things that we can be doing together to try and reshore a lot of critical jobs back here to the United States, and, of course, with a big focus here on the Midwest. But that was sort of the buzz in the side rooms, is this idea of becoming more optimistic, again, focusing on solutions rather than the problem. And you mentioned Aspen, and I will tell you, Hugh, you and I had the chance to attend Aspen together or at the same time a few years ago along with Ambassador O'Brien. And that's actually where the idea for this Midwest Defense Forum and Conference came from, was watching that year. I remember thinking that, this is not the way I think about things. This is not the way I was brought up by my parents to think about things. And we Midwesterners, we don't get caught up in these sort of preordained outcomes that we see at places like Aspen and Munich and Halifax. I wanted to get a place where we could have a conversation again about solutions.
Well, I'm very glad it got started. I am very worried. I can't be optimistic because it's a jump ball in the presidential election. And the one thing I know that the Kamala Harris administration will do is move sharply to the left and believe that we can do more with less at the Department of Defense. The reality of what the bottom line on defense spending is drives whatever can be done on national security. Does anyone think Kamala Harris would expand defense spending?
No, no. In fact, in all three of our panel discussions yesterday, there was a general consensus that the election of President Harris would see a flat line, if not a decline, in defense spending. The one thing we did note was, although President Trump in his list of 20 said that he wanted to strengthen defense, we don't have a high sense of how much he wants to strengthen that, meaning how much more he wants to spend. We did have a great conversation yesterday between three very vigorous national security strategists talking about how much we really do need to spend. And anything essentially from 900 billion to 1.4 trillion in defense spending to try to meet the needs of the present circumstances. And there was general consensus that the need is urgent, it's real, it's proximate. We need to start moving now. And our second panel then was actually on the industrial base, and we had three heavy industry manufacturers. Anduril was there, Fincantieri was there, the builder of the frigate. A steel maker out of Detroit was there talking about steel production. And they were talking about that the true challenge right now is capacity. How do we increase the capacity quickly in these heavy manufacturing industries?
Do any of those producers of defense, national security providers, whether it's Fincantieri, whether it's Anduril, do they understand the correlation between Harris or Trump in the White House and their ability to produce the weapons of war and thus of deterrence?
I think that they do, in the sense that they understand that you need sustained support for increased defense spending to really give industry the confidence to make the investments to expand, whether that's expanding their workforce or expanding automation. They need to know that these investments that they make this year and next year will actually allow them to achieve a profit in out years. They will spend out of their own pockets in year one, year two, but they have to have an expectation of a return on that investment. That needs sustained support for increased defense spending, and that would only really occur under Republican administration.
Now, you are the originator of and biggest exponent of the CHIPS Act, a sort of companion to the CHIPS Act. But I read in the Financial Times that 4 out of 10 of the projects funded by the CHIPS Act haven't even started, Jerry Hendrix. How long would it take to begin to produce the kind of weaponry, especially at sea, that we need?
Well, you and I have talked about this before, that, you need to, if you let a contract this year, you're not going to see that ship for another 3 to 5 years. Now, there are ways of compressing that. We actually, my first conversation yesterday was with Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Russell Rumbaugh, and we talked about that challenge of how do we increase the pace of ship production. And again, that's a ramp. You have to create the demand within the industry for them to hire the additional people or add automation, and then understand that it needs to be sustained. And then you can compress those timelines. During World War II, we were building battleships in less than 2 years, and I'm talking big battleships. Once you get up on step, you can go very quickly. The other thing that we talked a lot about yesterday was unmanned systems and artificial intelligence-driven systems. Those things perhaps we could go a little bit quicker on. Anduril really brought some interesting and innovative ideas there. And I know that you've had other speakers on, Joe Lonsdale, for instance. We'd love to, continue to have that conversation. But I think that there's a lot of interest in that innovation here in the Midwest amongst some of the leading engineering universities here.
If people want to go and find the proceedings, have you posted tapes at SagamoreInstitute.com or whatever the website is?
SagamoreInstitute.org, and we will be putting up information regarding, the information that came out, the conversation came out at our website at the SagamoreInstitute.org.